Hi there, and thank you for joining me today. If you've knitted scarves and hats before and you're just looking for that extra little project to do for knitting, then I think I've got you covered. Literally, I've got your hands covered because we're going to be knitting mittens. This pattern is great because it goes from a size toddler right up to an adult size large, so you can make them any size, and they are adjustable in certain areas, and I'll explain that in the video. I'll be using a nice, cozy, bulky yarn, so they'll be warm for you and just soft to the feel. Now, I do go really slow in the video if you're still learning how to knit, and I do these with a circular needle, but don't fret. You can do it. I know you can do it. I've got faith in you because I go really slow and you're going to be able to do it. If you're more advanced in your knitting, then feel free to just speed up a little bit. So there you go. Let's get started with the supplies. The pattern I'm going to share with you will knit a toddler, child, small adult, medium adult, and large adult. The main reason I had decided to make some mittens is because I had made this hooded scarf a while back, and I do have a video on this, and I'll leave that link in the description box below the video if you're interested in making a hooded scarf. And so I went about to find a pattern I liked to make some mittens to go with it. This is okay, but it was on the little bit of the flimsy side, and I wanted a thicker mitt and a warmer mitt. So I went up to a bulky yarn, and here's a bulky yarn, and you can probably see the difference. You can see how this is thicker, and this is kind of a little bit floppy and flimsy. And I do like the weight of this better. So I found some bulky yarn that works out really well to make the mittens. Now, I do have this yarn already, so what I can do, instead of using just one strand, I can double up, and you can do the same. And this is a medium weight 4 yarn that I originally used for the scarf. And I'll just double it up, and I'll make myself some mittens to match the scarf. So being that I wanted a bulky yarn, this is what I chose: loops and threads. And as you can see, it's a bulky 5. We'll be using 2 sizes of circular needles. And I started with using 3.75, and I just found, that was this one, and I just found it to be a little bit on the looser side, and I wanted to tighten it up just that bit more, so I went down to a 3.5 millimeter circular needle. And then for this portion, it's a 4.5. Now, don't be afraid of using circular needles. That's what makes it so nice that you don't have to put a seam on your sides. And it's very easy to join in the round, and I will be showing you that when you watch the video. Now, when you're buying your circular needles, try to find one that's got a little bit more nylon or plastic cord or steel cord, whatever needle you get. It doesn't matter what kind. But I found that these ones were just that little bit too short. It didn't give me enough that I had to keep pulling this out, and you'll see in the video what I mean. So if you can go for a little bit longer, I mean, these will do. If that's all you've got, then you can do it. But if you go for one that's just a little bit longer in the middle, then I just find it easier. And all you're doing is you're just pulling out the cording in between your knitting. But again, that will make sense when you get to my video. Because I changed up the size and I wanted 3.5, when I went looking in the stores, they didn't have the length I want, and these ones are way too long. But I'm still going to use them, and I'll show you it's still possible. And that's what I'm just saying, use what you have. It all works. Now, the other thing with this pattern, you have some flexibility. I was knitting a pair of mittens for myself, and I chose to knit the adult small. So for me, I've got a little bit more longer fingers, so I can feel my thumb is hitting at the end here, and I can feel my fingers are hitting to the end. So I knit another pair, and this is what I did. I left the cuff at the same size, but as you can see, I made my thumb a bit longer, and I also made the glove a bit longer on the end, and that's what you can do to fit the hand that you're knitting for. And you can, of course, make your cuff any size you want. This one's 4 inches, this one's 3 inches, and this one's 2 inches, depending on how long you want your cuff and for the person you're knitting it for. And also, this mitt is fine for a right hand or a left hand. I honestly don't want to have to go in my drawer and go, oh, is this for the left hand or is this for the right hand? I'm not going there. That's too much work. So every mitt is knit exactly the same. So I'm making it easy for you. So let's knit the companion to this one. So I've got a pair of mitts to wear. Now, if you've watched any of my other knitting videos, you know I usually do a knitted cast on. This time I'm going to show you the long tail cast on, mainly because it gives a little bit more give to the bottom of your knitting. So I'm just going to pull out about, 30 to 36 inches. We probably don't even need that much. The easiest way is I just make a cross like so, and then you're going to pop that yarn up through the hole right there. You can grab it with your thumb, release your fingers if you pull these two down. So let's pop that on our needles, which will be the 3.5 size. And let's start our long tail cast on. Here's our long tail. That's coming off to the left. And here's our yarn that's coming off of the ball. The actual knot portion is on the left hand side here. I'm going to take my yarn that's coming off the ball of my yarn from the ball here, and I'm going to use my tension that I like to use by wrapping around my baby finger. Then I come up and I hold it here. I'm grasping on here. That stops the yarn from moving. And then I've got this to slide up and down for tension. Okay. So once I've got that, I'm then going to hold on to my slip knot right here, and I'm ready to do my long tail cast on. The easiest way I find is to think about grasping the yarn like so. Your thumb comes over top, and you're going to twist it around like so. And then your needle is going to come into the loop on your thumb. Just to hold on with your thumb, you're going to wrap from back to front. Your loop comes over the needle, and you've made your first long tail cast on. Let's do that again for you. Grab on, thumbs on the top, wrap around, insert the needle in that loop, hold on, wrap around, loop comes over the needle, and you've made another one. Okay, so a little bit faster, just so you can see what I'm doing here. Okay, so I'm going to continue on and put on 28 cast on stitches. And when you're making your cast on stitches, make sure that you pull down equally on the same length for each one for even consistency. So they're all the same size. So for me, I'm doing the adult small size. So I've cast on 28 stitches. And once you've got them cast on, what we're going to do is we're going to turn this around so the needle end is pointing to the right. Now what I want you to do is I'm going to come in here and we're going to count out 14 stitches. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. And we're going to bring that onto the cording of the circular needles. And we're just going to pull that cording out. And you'll see how I don't like the longer ones because it all tangles up like this. But this is what I have. And I'm showing if you've got the same kind, then it'll be the same for you. Okay? So now you've got 14 on this side and 14 on this side. Now what I want you to do is I want to make sure that all those cast-ons, the little bumpies, and the loops are all on the top, like so. Now, what we're going to do is this is how we're going to do all our knitting, every row. We're always going to knit on the front needle. What we're going to do now is all these are going to slide off onto that plastic cording, and you're going to pull it out, and that gives you some flexibility to have another needle to work with while these are being held on the cording. So this particular pair of mittens is going to be knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one. So 1 and 1 ribbing. This yarn will be on the top. So coming over the top. You don't want it hanging down underneath. You want it hanging over the top like this. Into that first stitch, I'm holding these both together so that first stitch is nice and tight when we join in the round. So around the back of the needle, onto the front, and let's knit that first stitch. Okay, you've now joined in the round. Now we need to do a purl stitch, so we're coming around the back to bring the yarn to the front, and now we're coming into the front of the stitch, and we're doing a purl. Yarn to the back, we're doing a knit. And continue on, knit and purl. And I'll show you what happens when we're finished knitting these on this portion of this one needle here. Okay, so let's go a little bit faster. I'm sure you know how to knit and purl by now if you're doing this mittens, if you're doing the mittens. Okay, so we've knit these ones. So what you're going to do now, I'm just dropping this left needle, and I want you to turn this around so the needle is pointing to the right again. There's your bottoms right there. Here's your loops on the top. Okay. So now we want to be always knitting on the front. So what we need to do is we're going to push these knitted stitches onto the cording just so we don't lose them. And now this one, and you can see why I don't like all this long cording. It's a lot to pull through every time, and that's why I don't like the extra long circular needles, because I've got all this to contend with. But it works if that's all you've got. Okay, so now you want to pull it out. That's your back one, so you've got something to work with. Again, what we want to do is we're going to hold these two together so you make that first loop so you don't get a big drag in here. Okay, so let's insert that needle. Now remember, our last stitch was a purl, and you can tell by the little knob on the top. There's a purl, that's a knit, there's a purl. So we know the next stitch has to be a knit. So let's put in our needle to start for our knit. Let's grab our yarn so we're ready to go. We're holding these two together so we don't get the drag. And we're going to knit that first stitch. Okay. And then we're back to knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. So we finish this row. Once you've got that first one done, you don't have to hold them both together. Whatever you're comfortable with. And we'll finish this row of knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one. Just a couple stitches, and we've got a knit, and we have a purl. Okay, the same thing again. We're going to now turn this so the needle is facing to the right. This is the yarn that's coming off the back of the needle here. And here's the front side. Okay, so we're going to push those up on the forward needle. And you can just see what I did there. This was in my way. So I just twisted the needle and it makes the cording go down so it's not in your way as much. You can play around with that as well. Okay. Now, again, we're knitting on the front and we have to use this needle. So we take all these stitches and we just pull it down onto the cording so we have the needle to work with for our right needle. Again, let's work these two up together, holding them together. And we're starting with, again, a knit stitch. And do that first one on the tighter side, just so you can join in the round still. So it keeps it nice and tight so you don't have a big drag of yarn in between those parts where you're joining the round. And again, knit those 14 stitches on the front needle. I've finished my last purl. So what are we doing? We're turning again. At this point in stage, it might feel a little weird because sometimes this will twist up the wrong way, but as long as this is in the back and all your stitches are sitting in the front, again, these stitches come back. And pulling the cord out. Again, making sure that that yarn is on the top of the cord. So I just go under with my needle, making sure it's sitting on the top. Again, we're starting with a knit stitch, holding the two together so you don't get that long drag on the round. Okay, I'm hoping that that's making enough sense that we can continue on now and just keep turning it. So the needles are always pointing to the right. When you start your next round, you'll always end with a purl. And when you come around to your other side, your next stitch will always be a knit. And as you can see, if you look behind here, purl, knit, purl, and we always start with a knit because we've divided equally 14 and 14. If you had different odd amount of stitches, then that wouldn't be the case. But in this case, it works. So you're always going to have a knit to start with. Now I've been talking about how you'll end on a purl, and when you turn it around, you'll always start on a knit. Now that is only if you are having even amount of stitches on both sides. So yes, this works for the adult small, because divided by 28, you can have 14 stitches on each side, and 16 for this one, 18 on this one, all even stitches, which works. But you'll see for the toddler and the child, when you divide 22, you get 11, an odd number, and this one, an odd number of 13. So if you still want to have it so you're always knitting, so it's easy to remember, then you're just going to have to divide your stitches a little differently. So in the case of the 22 stitches, I've put 2, 4, 6, 8, 12 on the back needle, and I have 10 on the front needle. So now you'll always still be able to do the purl for your last stitch and the knit for the first one. And then, of course, when you've finished your ribbing, you don't have to worry about it anymore. You're just straight knitting. And then you can go back to having the 11 and 11 for the toddler and 13 and 13 for the child. All right, I'm going to leave you with it. I think you got this. Doing your one-on-one ribbing until you have your 3 inches, or how many inches you're doing. You could do 4 if you want to, and depending on the size you're knitting. 2 inches for the little guys, 4 inches for the big ones. And I'm right in the middle, I'm doing 3. In case you lose track of where you are in your knitting, and you'll often see on the pattern, it will say BOR, beginning of row. So you'll always know where the beginning of your row is, because this is where your cast on is, and you can follow that all the way up and you know where you're at. Next step is we're going to change up to our larger needle, which is a 4.5 millimeter or US 7. And so on your knitting that's toward you as always, we're done with the ribbing, so they're all knit stitches now. And again, every row, I still like to push these two together just to make sure that that first stitch is nice and tight. And we're just knitting all those 14 stitches on this front needle. I'm going to take off the sound because my needles are making a lot of noise on the table, and then I will come back to you when we finish these 14 stitches. And here's my last stitch. And as always, I'm going to turn this around. And then again, we're going to pull this out. And with the other end of the larger needles, what I'm going to do is just come in here and find all my stitches and just place them onto the larger needle. And it's easier if you do it while the stitches are on the cord portion of your circular needles, because then you've got more room to get in there. It'll be a little bit tight because you've got that cording in there too, but once you've got that in there, we're going to then take that cording from our other needle, the one we don't want anymore, and we're just going to pull that out. Ooh, so much noise, sorry. There we go. We're done with the smaller needles, and we've got all the stitches on our larger needles now. We've already knit these on the larger needle, and we're going to knit these ones to get back to the beginning of our round. So let's knit these ones. And remember, it's all knitting now. And I'm only saying that because I've caught myself a few times knitting up these mittens, and I've started doing the purl and knit ribbing. And I'm going, no, all knits, all knits, all knits. So just a reminder for you too. Okay, so I'm going to knit to the end of this 14 stitches here. And there's my last knit. As always, we're turning. And we've done that first row. And now we're going to do row 2 of knitting. Round 2, I should say, because we're working in the round. Okay, so this is now round 2. And I'll go all the way around like always. And you always know where you're going because, as we talked about, this is the beginning of your round and we are completing to there. So we've got to come to here. Again, you're looking for the beginning of your round and you know that you're finishing there. And if you've got confused and I've confused you or whatever, you can come back in and you can count those rows. So you can see this is row 1, 2, and 3. You don't count the row that's on the needle. And now what we're going to do is we're going to set up and make the gusset part of the thumb. So you can see here where we've got all these increases so we can have a nice thumb area. Okay, so let's start that. You should be at the beginning of your row and you should have 14 stitches on the back needle and 14 stitches on the front needle. Okay, so again, moving back onto the cord, and these are nice and ready to go on the front. To do our increasing, we are going to do an M1, which means make 1. So in between, here's the start of our row, there's our last stitch we knit, and here's the first stitch we're going to be knitting. In between here, you're going to see a little bar right there. So what you're going to do is you're going to find that bar using your right needle. You're going to lift up that bar, and then you're going to place it on your left needle. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the back of that stitch, like so, and then you're going to knit it. And that comes off. We have now made another stitch. In between our make ones, we're always going to knit 1 stitch. So this next stitch is just a knit. And now we're going to make another stitch. Again, looking for that bar in the middle of the stitches here, other stitches. Slip your right needle, lift up that bar, insert your left needle into that stitch, and then you're going to take your right needle and go into the back of the stitch. Now sometimes it's a little tricky, but you can do it. And the reason we're going into the back of the stitch, it just helps to prevent any holes. And there's our last make 1. We've increased by 2. But you're going to see 3 extra because we've got the knit in the middle. After you've made your last make 1, let's just put a marker on here, and that will keep track for you of where you're at. Okay, now we're just going to knit all the way around the whole round. So the stitches on this needle, turn, and the stitches on this needle. And now we're just going to knit 2 rows, just even knitting with no increases. So we do our increase row with our make ones, then we do 2 rows of plain knitting all the way around twice. This is just the 3 stitches we've got before our marker. That's fine. You can just knit up to the marker and then slip your marker onto the right needle and continue knitting around for your round one knitting of just plain knits, no increases, all the way around. Finishing round one. And exactly the same for round two. Knitting all the way around till you get back to the beginning of your round. The last few stitches I'm knitting for just my knit round. And you know when to stop because you know where your cast on yarn is. So here we are at the beginning of our round, and now we're going to make one again. So again, find that bar, lift up the bar, insert your left needle, come into the back, and then knit that stitch. And now we're going to knit up to the marker. So that's 3 knit stitches. And then let's make one again. Again, under that bar, insert the left needle into the back of the stitch and knit that stitch. Slip your marker and complete your round, knitting all the way around back to the beginning of your round. Every time you do a make one round, you're increasing your round by 2 stitches. Now, if you're anything like me, I totally lose track of where I'm at because I get called away, I multitask, and I'm all over the place. So far, we've done that first make one round. We did that one. And then, as you'll see on the pattern, rows 1, 2, and 3 repeat. We did 1 row of knitting, we did 2 rows of knitting, and we've just done our round 3 to make 1. Those are the 3 rows we've done. We've just done our make round. Now we're back to round 1. So that's, I'll just put a knit. There we go. So all knits, increasing with our make ones. Then we do it again. We're going to do that 1, 2, 3, 4 times for the size of mitt that we are making. Okay, so I just do that and I keep track better than myself that way. So now I know my next round, I'm knitting around. And so here's our knitting around, no increases. And when you get to your little marker, you just slip it over, pass it over, and keep knitting around. All right, so I'll see you back when I get to the beginning of my round. And we're ready for another make one round. Again, beginning of the round, in with the right needle, onto the left, into the back of the stitch, and you've made one. We're now knitting to that marker. Into the bar, Insert your left needle into the back of the stitch. Slip your marker and knit all the way around to the beginning of the row. Okay, you followed along for the first two, and you're going to repeat rows 1 to 3 2 more times. And then before your stitch marker and between your beginning of the row, you should have 11 stitches. Right now I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I know I have to do this 2 more times because each round you increase by 2. So I've got 7, then I'll have 9. Next one around I'll have 11. And I've just completed my last make one, and as you can see I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 stitches from the beginning of my round to my marker. So now I'm just going to finish this round, and we'll come back to the beginning of our round and we'll start you back there again. And I'm back to the beginning of my round, and I have my 11 stitches that I've made for my thumb gusset. You're now going to take just a waste piece of yarn, preferably in a different color, thread it through your darning needle, and let's place those 11 stitches on our waste yarn. And just tie a little loose knot, just so you don't lose those stitches. And those are ready to go, and we're going to knit this thumb portion after we complete the rest of our mitt. So we're just going to pull our needle through because those stitches are now safe. They've been placed on the waste yarn, but we need this needle to knit the rest of our knitting. Now we have 11 stitches for our thumb gusset, and we're now going to be one short to keep this even from side to side. So if you actually count around, you'll see that you're on an odd number of stitches. So we've got 2, 4, 26, 27. We need 28. So we need to make one more stitch in our side here. So let's bring our needle up. And what we're going to do is I'm going to actually break this. So I've got 13 stitches on my front needle. So I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. And then I will bring out my cord here, and I should have 14 stitches on my back side. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to be bringing these two together, and we need to join our round here, leaving our thumb gusset out. The way we're going to add one more stitch in here is I'm actually going to come in the middle of these two stitches, and I'm going to poke my needle through the back. I'm holding these both together because we don't want a big gap here because it'll cause a bigger hole in our thumb gusset. So let's come around our needle, and we're pulling that up for another stitch, and then we're going to place that on the end of our needle. So now we've created another stitch. So now we'll have 14 here and 14 there. Now if you want to always know where your beginning of your round is, by all means you can place your marker back on here, and you'll know where the beginning of your row is. I always keep my extra wire from my needles out this way, then I know where my 14 is, and I know where the other side of my knitting is. So, but you can place a marker on the side as well if you want to, but I don't tend to do that because then it keeps falling off when you're knitting the rounds. We made this extra stitch, so now we're just going into that stitch there, and we're knitting that one. And we're going to go all the way in the round, knitting all the way around. And I'm just completing that first round. As you can see, I have my marker here, and that might tend to fall off, so I usually just pull it off until I've got my needles turned, and then I'll pop it back on again because it will fall off. Keeping the middle section here, you don't have to, but it sets you up for the next step when we finished our knitting up here. Okay, so here's my 14 on this side, 14 on that side. You can place your marker back on. Yarn's in the right position. And then again, like before down here, you want to try to make sure that this is as tight as you can so you don't get a hole in your thumb gusset there. So nice and tight right there. And go around and work your next round. And you're going to continue all those rounds until you have the amount needed for the size of mitt that you're knitting. Now, I was knitting the adult small, short up in here. So I knit a little bit further than that, but the pattern does say knit 3 3/4 inches until we start our decreasing for the top of our mitt. So I'm going to just keep measuring to this one and make sure this is identical to this mitt. And I'm back to do my third round again. And just as a reminder, just keep making sure that these are nice and tight together when you're knitting this portion at the beginning of your round, so it doesn't create a big hole. All right, so I think you got it. So continue knitting those rounds, like I said, until you have 3 3/4 inches, or a bit smaller or a bit longer. And in a moment when I knit a little bit further, I'll show you where we measure from. And I've knit a few extra rounds here for you so it makes more sense. Here's your thumb gusset. This is where we joined in the round for the mitten portion. And so I'll take my tape measure and measure just from the beginning where we joined in the round there, and then measure up by 3 3/4 or to the size that you want to match your other mitten. Now, the other thing I should have mentioned is if you want identical mittens from your both of them, is you could have counted your rounds. So from the very first round, if you want to count them all, and let's say you want 17 rounds in total, then you'll have 17 rounds on your one mitt and 17 rounds on this mitt before you start your decreasing. So that is another thing you can do, just as a little tip there if you want them identical. But I tend to just match them up and see where I'm at. And that works just as well. So I'm just doing a test here. And there's the start of when I did the round above the gusset. And I now have pretty close to 3 3/4. Now the other way you can do this is sit it on top of your other mitten, matching up the gussets, and you can see where we're going to start to decrease. So you can see that I'm very close or right on for the start of the decrease. Another way to tell, if you're knitting this for yourself, put your mitten on, and if your pinky is just covered with your knitting, then you know you're ready to do your decreasing. So I'm just doing a second measure, and I'm going to just do one more round just to be on the safe measure, because I'd rather have them too long than too short. Now I've already set this up to start the decreasing setup. I've already got 14 on this side, 14 on this side, and I leave the extra cord here. But if you want to follow the pattern, we're going to knit these 14 and then going to place a marker. Okay, so we'll just do that. I'll knit 14. There's my 14, but I'm just going to turn my work before I place that marker because it will just fall off anyways. Let's place our marker. And now we're going to knit to the end of the round and place our other marker, which I already have on. But if you're following the pattern, so it makes more sense, that's what we're doing. And knitting the last 14. I've already got my marker on there. Let's give it a turn. Pull out these ones, pull down these ones, and then we can put our marker back on. We're going to start our decreasing by knitting just one first, and then we're going to do our SSK. So we're going to slip one knitwise, I'm going to slip one purlwise, then I'm going to come in and I'm going to knit these 2 stitches together. Okay, and now we're going to knit till we're 3 stitches before our marker. Here's our marker, 3 stitches before. We're going to come in and we're going to knit 2 together and knit 1. We'll just take that marker out because it's going to fall off when we turn our work. You can put your marker back on. And the same thing for this side. We're going to knit 1. We're going to slip knitwise. We're going to slip purlwise. I'm going to come in, grab both of these stitches, and knit them together. And now we're going to knit again to 3 stitches before our marker. There's our marker. 2 together. And knit 1. You've now completed 1 complete round. So we're going to turn our work like we always do, and you're going to repeat that same process until you're left with 8 stitches on your needle. So there'll be 4 on this needle and 4 on this needle. I thought I would just show you the last decrease row together. I've got 6 stitches on my needle. This is my last decrease row. So you're going to be doing the same thing for your last one. Slip 1 knitwise, slip 1 purlwise, knitting the 2 together. And you'll just notice that after you've done that, you've already got 3 stitches left on your needle. So you're immediately going to go in and do these knit 2 together. Just thought I would show you that just in case you thought you had done something wrong, but you haven't. And you've got your 4 stitches on the needle. And then you'll do the same for this side, and then we'll get back to you. I now have 4 stitches on my back needle, 4 stitches on my front needle, and you're just going to cut off your yarn, leaving enough to sew around the top of the mitt. And let's put that onto our large-eyed dining needle, and we're going to thread it through those stitches. I finished knitting this way, so I'm going to thread through this way. There's my 4 there. Pull that through, and then let's take that needle out. We don't need it anymore. And then come and grab the 4 left on the back needle. Pull that through, take your needle out. Now what I like to do is I like to come in here and put my hand up into the mitten. I'm left-handed though, so I'm going to put my right hand into the mitten, and then I can sew easier because I'm left-handed. All those arty-farty people are left-handed. Did you know that? Okay, so I'm going to cinch up on all those just a little bit because I want to go around and grab all those stitches again. I want to be able to see them. So I've got 1 here, 1 there. There's 4 there. And I'm going to grab my last 4. I like to go around twice. It just cinches it up a bit better. There's my last one. Okay, and now give it a really good tug and get those all cinched up. I've got 1 loose thread here. That's never happened to me before. Of course, right when I'm going to demonstrate. So the way I'm going to fix that is I'm kind of glad it did happen because now I can show you what I'm going to do. So I'm going to take these 2 stitches, loop through there again. Then I'm going to come back down into the middle in here. I'm going to grab that needle from the inside and I'm going to pull down on it. And that should suck those other 2 in tighter. There we go. That's definitely helped. It's funny that that's never happened to me before. Anyways, there you go. I fixed it. Okay? So now, once you've got your hand inside there, I'm just going to poke that through because I want to finish it off on this side. So now on the back side, let's give it another good tug. And I'm just going to loop through a couple of these stitches on the back here. Pull your needle through that loop to tie it off. Let's do that one more time just to be on the safe side. Go through a few of these stitches. I like to go up one way and then I come back the other way. And then I can cut that off. There we go. That one's done. And just for fun, let's do a chest. I don't think I could get much closer than that. Look at that, eh? Perfect. Now we're going to finish our thumb. Now you're going to have an odd number of stitches. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over here. So I'm going to grab those 6. I'm going to come from this way because I want my needles pointing to the right, as always. There's those 6. Just going to untie my waste yarn. And I want to pull that out. And you might have grabbed a little bit of it when you're trying to thread through on those stitches, which is okay. It'll come through. There we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on this side. And then let's grab these ones on this side. Again, needles coming so they're pointing to the right. Because of the way this is knit, sometimes you get a bit of a hole in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a stitch on this side, and I'm also going to pick up a stitch on this side. So here I'm going to come in, and you see the stitch right here. I'm going to come in, I'm going to grab that one, just loop it right underneath, and on this side I'm going to grab this one here. Okay, we'll be knitting on the front. So again, we're still going to pull these out, and these are the ones we're going to knit first. Okay, now as you can see, we don't have any yarn to work with. So take the yarn from your ball of yarn again, and then I want you to leave out, I don't know, about a foot. And that's just in case you create a hole here and you can clean that up. Sometimes you can do a perfect job and there'll be no hole. Other times there's a bit of a hole. So we're going to just fold that over like so. Okay, so there's the top, there's your shorter end and your end from your ball of yarn. Okay, so your yarn's ready to go. Let's pick up our right needle, place it into that first stitch that we picked up. Now we're going to place that yarn over that back needle, and we're going to knit that first stitch. Now it's going to be very loose, so just pull down on it a little bit because you don't want to create a hole in your thumb gusset. So you're going to have your two ends. This is your short end, and this is the end coming off the ball of yarn. Take your ball of yarn, and we're ready to knit our second stitch. All knits into the second stitch, and you've knit that one. Again, pull down just to make sure you don't create that hole. Let's knit the rest of these stitches. And as always, returning, just like we did on our mitten. Those come back and these come forward, just like we always do, except we're just knitting on a few stitches now. Okay, and now let's knit these stitches. Okay, turn. If your little tail of yarn is getting in the way, you can just pop it down into your thumb here, because I'm finding it's getting in my way, so it might be getting in your way too. There we go. So we've knit one round. We're back to the beginning of our round. And what I want you to do now is I want you to knit two together so we get back to the original stitches that we had for our thumb. This again, I want you to hold really close together to do these knit two together. And then around we go again. Another turn. And every time you get back to where we joined in the round, you're going to do that close together, okay? So again, squishing together and making that first stitch that's in the round. Carry around. So continue that until you have the size that you need. You want 1 3/4 inches, but again, I'll show you when we get a little further on here. You knit it to the size that you want. You might have a little bit of a longer thumb than other people. So if you want that little bit more comfort, then you knit it a little bit longer. So I'm just going to knit a few more rows here, same as we're doing, and then when we're close to measuring, I will get back to you and we'll do the measure together. And here we are. I've knit a few rows and see where I'm at. And as I said, I wanted mine a little bit longer. So this one here is measuring approximately, because you don't measure the needle. So I'm saying I'm really close to 1 3/4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another test by putting my hand into the mitten. So once you've got your thumb in the mitt, then you can tell how much longer you've got to go. Because the only other row we're going to do now is we're going to be knitting 2 together all the way around and then cinching up like we did before at the top of our glove. So you might say, okay, that might be a little bit tight, so I might just do 1 more round, or match it up with the mitten that you've already made. So here's my other mitten, and right down here, so I'm going to take 1 more row, and then we're going to do the knit 2 together. Okay, so I've knit my last round, and now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be knitting 2 together. So what I'm going to do is I'm just pulling all these stitches together, and I want even stitches when we're knitting 2 together. 2, 4, 6, 8 stitches, and then we can do those all together. Work those up on our front needle. And so 1, 2. Let's knit 2 together all the way around. It's going to be tight because I've knit a little bit tight on my last row there. There's 2, but we don't want it so loose that we'll get that little bump that we did on the top of our mitten, right? And turning so we can get the last 4 to knit these together. 2 together. And you should have 6 stitches left on the needle. There's 4 on this side and 2 on this side. So again, let's cut your yarn, and we're going to thread that through like we did the top of the mitten. Same thing, coming this way. I just about lost a stitch. Did you see that? It's right there. Ooh, just got it. Because I should have 4 on there. Silly me. And the last 2 on this needle. Good thing I caught that last stitch, eh? Got my thumb in there. And let's give it a little bit of a tug. And then you're going to come back through those stitches again. And again, come down through that middle to the inside. Grab the needle from the inside, and then you're just going to reverse your whole mitten so you can see that inside of your thumb. And then while you've got your mitt on the reverse side, let's reverse it 100% here all the way. Let's see how we did with our thumb gusset. Okay, we didn't do too bad, but this is what you're going to get sometimes, that little bit of a hole, and that's why we left the tail here. So we can just sew that up a little tiny bit more. So to bring that together, I'm just going to come under this one and grab the stitch on this side over here. And that will help pull that together nicely, right like that, see? And then let's come over onto this side here and just join it up over to the other side here. And that's all it takes just to bring that together, okay? And then we just want to tie that off again. So let's grab this one here through the loop. And then while we have this reversed, your last thing to do is sew in your end one. And you're going to see that there's just a little bit of a step up because you were knitting in the round. So we're just going to fix that. Here's your stitch there. So we kind of want this to come up and around to even out the edge. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to come through the stitch here. And that just evens it out, you see? And then we'll just come down into one more stitch here so we can tie that off into a knot so we don't lose it. Reverse it back to the right way up, and you are done. Oh, I'm so happy. I have a warm mitt on my hand. Thank you so much. And we have a pair of mittens that are both the same size. Look at that. So glad you are still with me, and I hope you enjoyed the video and are excited to knit a pair of mittens. Or maybe you were already following along now and you are already wearing your mittens like I am. And if so, congratulations. Thanks again for watching and happy knitting.